Dogmatic interpretation have obscured the obvious. When Moses asked for the divine name at the burning bush, the answer was, "I am that I am," precisely the same consciousness that you experience now while reading these words. That fundamental certainty of existing, prior to any identification with name or form, constitutes the divine presence operating through human experience. Not a spark, not a connection, but the total creative power of the universe, manifesting as individual consciousness. Neville Goddard exposed this mechanism without ambiguity in Feeling is the Secret. Consciousness is the one and only reality, not figuratively but literally. Every object, person, and circumstance in the physical world represents states of consciousness crystallized into apparent form. The observer creates the observed, not poetically, but operationally. Jesus Christ stated, "The kingdom of heaven is within you, and I and the Father are one," revealing not a special condition of his own, but the nature of all human consciousness. When understood literally, these declarations destroy the religious power structure built upon the premise of separation. If each individual recognized their divine identity, all external spiritual authority would evaporate instantly. The mechanism by which you forgot this truth operates through the apparent division of consciousness. Neville describes two aspects working together: the conscious, masculine and selective, which thinks and chooses, and the subconscious, feminine and receptive, which accepts without question and manifests into reality. The conscious generates ideas and impresses these ideas on the subconscious. The subconscious receives ideas and gives them form and expression. The operational secret resides in feeling as the only means of communication between these aspects. No idea can be impressed upon the subconscious until it is felt, but once felt, be it good, bad, or indifferent, it must be expressed. Each sustained emotion programs the subconscious, which faithfully reproduces these impressions as external conditions. The world around you now reflects exactly the feelings you have cultivated, consciously or not. This deliberate forgetting serves a specific purpose. Like an actor who must forget their identity to fully live a character, the divine consciousness needed to veil its omniscience to genuinely experience the human condition. Neville confirms, the waking man is under compulsion to express his subconscious impressions. To experience the human drama authentically, you first needed to forget that you wrote the script. Every financial problem arises from feelings of scarcity accepted as truth. Every illness manifests from emotions of vulnerability or attack sustained in the subconscious. Conversely, every success and moment of joy also emerged from corresponding feelings. You were never a victim. You were always the creator operating through a mechanism that no one taught you to use consciously. While millions pray to an external God, they are literally talking to themselves without knowing it. Each supplication represents the temporarily amnesiac divine consciousness, asking itself to remember its power. Each spiritual search is God looking for God, the infinite pretending to be finite, to experience the process of rediscovery. Your deepest desires are not whims of a limited ego, but impulses of the universal creative power seeking to express itself through your unique perspective. Each genuine ambition represents God desiring to experience more of himself through your specific focal point of consciousness. Awakening to this truth doesn't mean escaping human experience, but participating in it consciously. When the divine amnesia begins to dissipate, you don't abandon the game. You finally begin to play it with knowledge of the rules. The question then becomes, how did this divine consciousness voluntarily descend into human limitation? And what is the greater purpose of this elaborate journey of forgetting and remembering? The divine name revealed to Moses establishes the foundation of all genuine spiritual understanding. I am that I am doesn't represent an external entity introducing itself, but consciousness itself recognizing itself through Moses' human form. Every time you pronounce I am, followed by any qualification, I am tired, I am prosperous, I am sick, I am happy, you invoke the same creative power that spoke from the midst of the bush. The difference lies only in what you attach to this fundamental declaration of existence. The sacred words of the scriptures all converge on this same inner reality. Jehovah translates as He causes to be, or He brings into existence, precisely what your consciousness does continually. Lord means the one who has dominion, and you have complete dominion over your experience through feeling. Christ, from the Greek Christos, means the Anointed One, the consciousness awakened to its creative power. Jesus, or Yeshua, means Jehovah saves, consciousness saving itself from the illusion of limitation through recognition of its true nature. Matthew 16 presents one of the most significant revelations when Jesus asks the disciples who they say He is. Peter responds, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus then declares that this revelation didn't come from flesh and blood, but from the Father who is in heaven. Translating beyond the symbolism, when human consciousness recognizes its Christ identity, its anointed creative power, this perception comes from within, from the deepest dimension of being, not from external teaching. Neville Goddard illuminates the structure of this consciousness through the metaphor of the mystical marriage. The conscious is male, the subconscious is female. The mystery to which Paul referred when he wrote, "This is a great mystery. He who loves his wife loves himself, and the two shall become one flesh," is simply the mystery of consciousness. This union between the aspects of consciousness appears poetically in the Song of Songs. "By night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loves. I found him whom my soul loves. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of her who conceived me." The text describes the nocturnal process where the conscious mind seeks the subconscious to plant the seeds of desire. The mother's house, the chamber of her who conceives, represents the subconscious that gives form to all impressions. Neville explains, "Preparing to sleep, you feel yourself in the state of the wish fulfilled, and then relax into unconsciousness. Your realized wish is that which you seek." The spiritual structure revealed by Paul in 1 Corinthians establishes a precise hierarchy. Apostles first, prophets second, then teachers, workers of miracles, healers, helpers, administrators, and speakers in tongues. This order doesn't confer moral or spiritual superiority, but indicates specific functions in the cosmic drama. Romans 11 clarifies definitively, "Even so then, at this present time also, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. And if by grace, then it is no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace." The selection occurs before birth, before any conscious action or choice. Some are predestined to awaken first and assist others in the process, not through personal merit, but through the necessity of the divine plan of progressive self-revelation. Each role was distributed before the descent into human form. This descent represents the most extraordinary movement of consciousness. No one has ascended to heaven but he who descended from heaven. You cannot ascend to a state you didn't previously occupy. The divine consciousness voluntarily descended from perfect unity to experience multiplicity and separation. It wasn't a fall or an error, but a deliberate choice of temporary self-limitation. Neville describes the purpose. "You are an eternal dreamer, dreaming non-eternal dreams." The infinite chose to experience finitude. The immortal chose to taste mortality, and omniscience chose to know ignorance. Through this journey, consciousness acquires something impossible in its original state of perfection: the genuine experience of overcoming, discovery, and transformation. The serpentine energy mentioned in ancient scriptures, the Kundalini of Eastern traditions, represents this same consciousness asleep at the base of the spine, destined to eventually rise through the energy centers until it explodes in the skull, revealing the glorified form, human in face and hands, but transcendent in power and wisdom. This is not esoteric symbolism, but a technical description of the awakening process predetermined for all incarnated consciousness. Human imagination doesn't constitute a tool that you possess or a mental faculty that you developed through evolution. Imagination is God Himself operating through the human apparatus, the fundamental creative power of the universe, functioning in and as you. When you imagine any scene, you're not using God. God is expressing Himself through your imaginative activity. Neville Goddard establishes categorically, consciousness is the cause as well as the substance of the entire world. Everything that exists arose first in imagination and then condensed into physical form through the mechanism of feeling. Your capacity to imagine doesn't differ from the divine act of creation described in Genesis. When you mentally visualize any condition and feel it as real, you're participating in the same process through which galaxies were formed. The I am that you experience and the universal creative power are identical, not similar. When Jesus declared, "Before Abraham was, I am," He was revealing that consciousness precedes all manifestation, that I am exists before any specific form or identity. Abraham represents the manifested world, while I am represents the unmanifested power that brings everything into existence. You are that power, temporarily identified with a specific name and form. The mechanism through which this power operates was precisely described by Neville. The creative process begins with an idea, and its cycle runs its course as a feeling and ends in a volition to act. But there's a crucial distinction here. It's not the intellectual idea that creates, but the feeling that the idea generates. Feeling is the one medium through which ideas are conveyed to the subconscious. Therefore, the man who does not control his feelings may easily impress the subconscious with undesirable states. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between what society considers real or imaginary. To it, what you feel deeply is an absolute fact that must be expressed in the physical world. Neville explains, the subconscious is not concerned with the truth or falsity of your feeling. It always accepts as true that which you feel to be true. Feeling is the assent of the subconscious to the truth of that which is declared to be true. This understanding eliminates the distinction between fiction and reality. Every imaginative act possesses real creative substance. A scene imagined with sufficient emotional intensity will inevitably manifest, not through magic or supernatural intervention, but through the very nature of consciousness. Because of this quality of the subconscious, nothing is impossible to man. Whatever the human mind can conceive and feel as true, the subconscious can and must objectify. The spiritual hierarchy described by Paul now reveals its true meaning. Apostles are consciousnesses designated to awaken first and assist others in the process. Prophets are those who perceive and declare truths before they become evident to the majority. Teachers are those who can articulate the process in a comprehensible way. But all operate with the same fundamental power. The difference lies only in the timing of awakening and the specific function within the greater plan. The grace that Paul mentions repeatedly doesn't represent arbitrary divine favor granted by an external God. Grace is the sudden, unearned recognition of your true divine identity. You cannot force this awakening through practices, disciplines, or good works. Romans makes it explicit. And if by grace, then it is no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. The awakening occurs at the predetermined moment, following the script that you yourself established before assuming human form. Some were selected to awaken at this specific historical moment, not through superiority or special merit, but because their awakening serves the unfolding of the divine plan. Each individual consciousness is equally God, equally powerful, equally sacred. The apparent differences in spiritual capacity reflect only different stages of the same remembering process that all will eventually complete. The mystery of the election remains hidden from the conscious mind. You cannot access the reason why you awaken at a certain moment, just as you cannot remember why you chose to be born into a specific family or circumstance. The Father, the deepest dimension of your own consciousness, keeps these secrets until the appropriate moment to reveal them. Trying to accelerate the process through personal effort contradicts the very nature of grace. When you understand that imagination is literally God operating through you, and that feeling is the creative mechanism, all traditional spiritual seeking loses meaning. You're not trying to reach God or develop divine powers. You're rediscovering what you always were, relearning to consciously operate the power you always used without realizing it. Every spiritual technique, every meditative practice, every religious ritual functions only as a different method to help consciousness remember how to assume the desired state through the feeling of its fulfillment.